To order, it's 13 April 2026, Waynesboro City Council meeting. Mr. Sloat, will you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, have it. Thank you, Mr. Sloat. Item 2 is adoption of the meeting agenda. Is a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
No second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. For the record, the Vice Mayor is with us via Teams. Item 3 is matters from the mayor. I don't really have anything this evening. Item 4 is matters from City Council.
I would like to say something. This is an ongoing process. I know a lot of you here to speak are here to speak and to listen about school board funding. Some miscommunication has gotten out there. We 100% have not set in our minds that we're going to set a rate or an adjustment to whatever. We had a preference in mind, but we've also dedicated ourselves to continue working with the school board. We have another joint session at the end of this month. You know, there's been some misconception that we're trying to cut the funding, okay? That's not the case, or that we're trying to box the school out of natural growth. In reality, if any of you have gone back and watched any of our budget sessions from early last year, all of the growth, a majority of the growth, I won't say all, but a majority of the growth was not natural. We created it as a balancing effect for our police, our sheriff, our fire, our emergency medical services. To let you know where we set with those services in comparison to our surrounding counties, in comparison to where our schools set, was a drastic difference. It's why when Mr. Castle was up here during his presentation of the school budget, I was curious as to where we are as far as competitive pay rate for our teachers, kind of middle of the pack. We were not there with our emergency services. We were not there with our fire department as far as being fully staffed and being competitive for the pay. The police department, we have over the past several years been the breeding grounds for our surrounding communities in those departments, much in the way that a while ago our school system was viewed. So while we can make numbers, we can look at whatever numbers we want that give preference to what we're trying to get across, and everybody can find numbers, you know, to support, you know, why it's not a great idea. The commitment of this council to make sure that the community of children gets a top-notch education, and the families that those children belong to also don't get priced out on the low end. So we are 100% committed. We have not set in our minds that it is going to be this way. If we had, we would have just put a motion forward and done it. There's no need for back and forth, and if we were that stubborn-headed, we could have just put forth a motion. But we are committed to making sure that everybody comes out in a positive way through this. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I encourage all of you to come to the joint session. I had some points, but I'll hold them for the joint session so that we can, you know, deliberate and kind of come to an understanding and agreement that works for everybody, mainly the community, because every dollar comes from them/us, because we're part of the community. So I'm very mindful of that. Everybody on this council is very mindful of that. And we appreciate everybody coming out and voicing your opinions. It shows how passionate our community is about our children. Just know that we are passionate about our kids too. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sloat. Any other comments?
I'll just echo that. I mean, thanks, Jennifer, for, it's, unscripted. I know you were going to say anything tonight, but I just want to echo that. And, I've had the opportunity to talk to several folks too. And I don't know if I begin or I end each of those conversations by saying this, but I'll just say publicly and just to share along, I'm sure is the sentiment of my colleagues, because we do talk about it and we do care about our school system and our collective community. And that is, I would never do anything that I felt would do harm to our school division. I love public education. Both of my kids have gone from kindergarten all the way to graduation in Waynesboro. Love this community, love public education, love our faculty, our administrators, everyone in the school. There's nothing that I would ever do that I thought would cause harm. But as we have been working diligently, when I first got on council, about 70% of our job board advertised pay scales that were at or below the poverty line for a family of four. 70%. And so we've worked really, really hard to change that narrative and to change the scope and the direction of compensation on the municipal side, and that's been slow because that sort of stuff takes a while. We can't just sort of jumpstart it. And so for that, with everything that we're trying to do on right sizing on the municipal side, that has a cause and effect because of the formula to raise additional revenue on top of trying to make some headway in our police department, our fire department, public works, Parks and Rec, and beyond, and all of our, even hourlies, even seasonal. So it's challenging and a balance, but yeah, I look forward to all the conversations. I've enjoyed all the 2-on-2s that I've had with the school boards, my colleagues, and I look forward to continuing to do that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Short.
I was just saying from the very beginning, as I said, I was never in favor of cutting funding to the school. A lot of misinformation was put out. Don't know where it came from. Just like earlier tonight, I was told that it said we had school funding, school budget stuff talking about that was reported on a particular social media site. As you can see, the agenda back there, there is nothing on the agenda for tonight to discuss. I invite anybody to get up and speak if they want. That's your right. That's partially how I ended up in this seat, because I got up and spoke passionately about something I believed in. So I encourage everybody to do that, not just this week, not about this subject, but we meet here the second and fourth Monday of every month. And I encourage you to do that here. I encourage you to do that at the school board. And I encourage you to do that at the planning commission. That is what our government is about, is the citizens' voice is to be heard. And I know I spoke to the news leader at one point after our first big budget. That was the first thing I said was, we are not here to cut funding to the school. So how that information circulated the way it did, I'm not really sure. But we're here to support our schools. We're here to support our children. My son went through Waynesboro Public Schools. He was a Westwood kid. And to me, there's, I wish we had the school system that we had when I was growing up. It's a much better system now. And, like I said, if you want to speak, please sign up and please speak and tell us what you think, because your opinions matter in decisions that we make here. And we want to make sure that we get it right regardless, that is right for everyone in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Wood, and I'll just echo, along with my colleagues, that everything they said, I agree with. We're trying to do the best that we can for the entire city, and that's the way that we approach what we do. So the school system is important, and it's at the top, along with some other divisions or offices, organizations within the city. So we're trying to do our best for all involved. Item 5, consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
One second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Item 6, is to consider presenting a proclamation recognizing the week of April 12th as National Animal Control Appreciation Week in the city of Waynesboro. Mr. Wood.
Yes, I would like to read the following proclamation. Whereas the National Animal Care and Control Association has designated the second week of April each year as National Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week, and whereas various federal, state, and local government officials throughout the country take this time to recognize and commend all animal control officers for the dedicated services they provide to the citizens, public safety, and public service agencies across the nation. And whereas every day, the Waynesboro Animal Control Officer performs a critical and often under-recognized role in maintaining safe, humane, and healthy communities, serving public safety, animal welfare, and community engagement. And whereas our Animal Control Officer puts herself in potentially dangerous situations by protecting people from dangerous animals and seeks justice in case of abused, neglected, and abandoned animals by conducting humane investigations and protecting the welfare of helpless animals and pets from injury, disease, and starvation. And whereas the Waynesboro Animal Control Officer routinely navigates complex and emotionally challenging situations with professionalism, compassion, and integrity to not only protect animals, but to contribute significantly to community safety and quality of life. And whereas the City of Waynesboro recognizes Officer Jennifer Anderson, our Animal Control Officer, for the many dedicated and long hours of service she provides with the highest and most efficient level of customer service to the residents of our community. And now therefore, our Mayor Kenneth B. Lee Sr., Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Waynesboro, hereby proclaims April 12th through the 18th, 2026 as National Animal Control Officers Appreciation Week here in Waynesboro. And we encourage all citizens to join us in expressing their sincere appreciation for the service and dedication of our Animal Control Officer. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Waynesboro to be affixed this 13th day of April, 2026, signed Kenneth B. Lee Sr., Mayor, City of Waynesboro.
Officer Anderson.
Officer Anderson.
Officer Anderson, you can have words if you like. You like to have, you good?
Thank you, everybody. I'm not really. Thank you. I appreciate the city, staying behind me and all the citizens of the city. Thank you.
An often thankless job, but you're never not appreciated.
Thank you.
Item 7 is to consider presenting a proclamation recognizing the week of April 12th as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the city of Waynesboro. Mr. Sloat.
Whereas, across the nation in times of intense personal crisis and community-wide disasters, the first access point for those seeking all types of emergency assistance and homeland security information is the 911 Center. And whereas often known as first responder, the unsung hero, or the calm in the midst of crisis, the 911 telecommunicator is the critical point of first contact for those in crisis and often experiencing the worst day of their lives. And whereas the Waynesboro Department of Emergency Management, Emergency Communications Center staff receives these calls and have emerged as the first and single point of contact for persons seeking immediate emergency assistance and are expected to multitask under stressful emergency conditions with compassion, accuracy, and professionalism throughout the year. And whereas this week, celebrated annually, honors the thousands of men and women who answer emergency calls, dispatch emergency professionals and equipment, and coordinate life-saving assistance to the citizens, residents, and visitors of Waynesboro and throughout the country. Now, therefore, Kenneth B. Lee Sr., Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Waynesboro, does hereby proclaim April 12th through the 18th, 2026, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Waynesboro, and encourages all citizens to join us in expressing their sincere appreciation for the service and dedication of our members of the Waynesboro Department of Emergency Management, Emergency Communication Centers. In witness thereof, Mr. Lee has hereunto set his hand and caused the seal of the City of Waynesboro, Virginia, to be affixed to this proclamation on this 13th day of April 2026.
Thank you, Gary.
Not like her, I don't have trouble talking, but I probably will. Thank you so much for recognizing this dedicated group of public safety professionals. The work they do each and every day means so much to our community. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Item 8 is to receive an update on library operations and present a proclamation naming the week of April 19th as National Library Week in Waynesboro. So we'll read the
Do the proclamation first.
proclamation first, and then we'll.
April's a busy month, y'all. I'm just going to say straight up. So, it's, my privilege. Whereas National Library Week 2026, themed for a richer, fuller life, read is recognized as a time to honor libraries, librarians, and library workers for their contributions to communities and lifelong learning. And whereas libraries spark creativity, fuel imagination, and provide equitable access to books, digital tools, innovative programming for all individuals, regardless of background. And whereas libraries and librarians look beyond their traditional roles and provide formative opportunities for education, employment, entrepreneurship, empowerment, and engagement, including Nerf battles, I'm sorry, I inserted that word, as well as new services that connect closely with patrons' needs. And whereas libraries play a critical role in the economic vitality of communities by providing internet and technology access, literacy, skills, and support for job seekers, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that promote a sense of local connection, advancing understanding, civic engagement, and shared community goals. And whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that our fine esteemed mayor, on behalf of the Waynesboro City Council, proclaim April 19th through April 25th, 2026 as National Library Week to honor the dedication of library staff and encourage public engagement through social media campaigns using hashtags like hashtag Libraries Transform, and hashtag National Library Week, and hashtag Waynesboro Library Rocks. Now I'm adding that one too, I apologize, to celebrate libraries' impacts on communities, signed our esteemed mayor. Thank you.
Oh.
Be quick, so thank you for that, and also thank you for your continued support for Waynesboro Public Library. So I just have a few highlights of where we are so far in fiscal year 2026, and then some exciting things that we have coming for the spring and summer. Hopefully this will work. Does not bode well. I can go do it the old-fashioned way. Okay. Okay. All right, and then I'll return the favor. Okay, so Leslie will assist. So we're just going to do a quick overview of collections. So this is what we have in the building and available digitally. So with a Waynesboro Public Library card, you can access not only our collection, but physical items at Augusta County Public Library and Stanton Public Library also. We have a courier that runs between the three localities every day. This is one of our greatest strengths, according to our survey. And remember that we are now fine-free, so even if something's overdue, just bring it back. We just want you to bring it back. So physical collections include not only books and DVDs, but things like book club kits, memory kits, audiobooks on CD, and things like culture passes. And we have a new one coming from the Blue Ridge Children's Museum that we'll have ready for this summer that allows people to check those out from the library and then go visit those locations. And then we have we have 18 databases, and those include resources like Jobs Now that help job seekers, Vet Now, which assists veterans returning to the workforce and trying to reintegrate into civilian life. We also have Novelist, so if you can't find a librarian and you're looking for that next grade read, you can go online. And then Creative Bug, if you're still trying to learn how to knit. There are resources like Wi-Fi, computers, tax forums. We have a seed library and a hiker's corner, and these are resources available to anyone who comes into the building. And because of our community partnerships, we now have a caseworker from the Community Assistance Network every Monday evening from 5 to 7 at the library, and we have Revive office hours, which is provided by Valley Community Service Board and Central Shenandoah Health Department. So you can go to the next slide now. So these are some highlights of fiscal year 26 so far, and this is compared to where we were last year at this time. So the things I want to highlight kind of show what we're doing and where we are. So circulation, that's physical only, we're at 74%, that's right where we should be. E-resources are up, we're at 83%. I continue to see this climbing, and I think that's where circulation will continue to increase the most. People are using our building. If you look at computer use, Wi-Fi use, meeting rooms, and study rooms, those are people physically coming into the building using our computers. So we're 87% compared to last year. Wi-Fi is at 86% usage compared to last year. Meeting rooms, we've exceeded community use of our meeting rooms at 101% at the end of the third quarter. And then our study rooms are at 56%. So they are very popular. They're at a first come, first serve basis as well as reservations. Printing is at 68%. Everything is being moved online, so I expect that to stay steady. Foot traffic at 75%. Again, we expect to see a lot more people in the next couple of months as we go into spring and summer, better weather. New cards is at 86%, so we have added more people to have access to the library. And then our programs are at 78% and outreach at 68%. That's the number of programs we're doing this year compared to last year, and same for outreach. So we're right where we should be, which is great. Okay, so you can go to the next. Sure, absolutely. Yes, thank you, Leslie. Yay! Whatever you did. And then none of this would be possible without our staff. And so they've gotten some recognition recently, which is lovely. So the 3 awards listed are from the Virginia Public Library Directors Association. So in October, we received the Silver Standards of Excellence Award. And then March was very good for the library. We received a Marketing Public Relations Award for our Library Card Sign-Up Month, which we did in conjunction with Klein's Espresso Bar, so a community partnership. And then our Book Bike Outreach Program, we received a Unique Outreach Engagement Effort Award, and you might see a familiar face there. And then we just received the Nora Roberts Foundation grant, which we are going to use for our Community Read program this spring. So that was very exciting, and the staff does a lot of hard work, and it's nice for them to be recognized. So what we did this year was we worked on our strategic plan. It has been reviewed by the Board of Trustees, and we're working on creating a final version, but these are our overall goals: to expand access both physically and digitally, to continue to create a welcoming, vibrant space, so to work on staff development, the physical plant of the library, and then to strengthen literacy and community. That's always a big thing for libraries. And then deepen connections between patrons and staff, between patrons themselves, between anybody who comes into the library, and any partnerships we can create. And then looking forward. So this is, as you know, National Library Week next week, and the theme is Find Your Joy, which I just think couldn't be better. So there are all these ways that you can find joy at the library. You can create, you can participate in lifelong learning, and you can help the community. And so if you want to create, you can come and make do-it-yourself paper lanterns. You can come and learn about librarians in a documentary called The Librarians. You can see or do some armchair travel and go to Egypt, or unearth a story and learn about dinosaurs. You can help the community with recycling bottle caps, or donating to the Little Free Library, or attending events like the Job Fest we had last week. So libraries should be places of fun, joy, learning, and connection, and that's what we strive to do every day. As we start to work on the strategic goal of deepening community connections and strengthening literacy and lifelong learning, we have 2 programs I want to highlight, one starting in May, and that is the Waynesboro Community Read. So this is, we're inviting the community to slow down, reconnect, and rediscover the power of stories through Stories That Restore, a community read hosted by Waynesboro Public Library in partnership with Stone Soup Books. We're concentrating on the books of Robin Wall Kimmerer, so you see her 3 books listed there. We'll have copies of those available for the public to pick up at both Stone Soup and the library, and the Friends of the Waynesboro Public Library has been a huge support in this program. We'll have discussions, nature-inspired programs, family activities, and they will reflect the themes in the books of reciprocity, gratitude. And you can read one book, or you can read them all, and you can come and talk to your neighbors and celebrate stories that nurture connection, curiosity, and care for each other and the world around us. So those books are for all age ranges. And that is what we will use the Nora Roberts grant for, because we will have Robin Wall Kimmerer do a pre-recorded talk, and we'll host that at the library. And then summer reading, we do this every year, June and July. It's for all ages. Everybody can sign up for summer reading. The theme this year is Unearth a Story, so come see our dinosaur, come to our programs. There's an app, you track your books, and children reach benchmarks and get prizes. Adults can enter tickets for a drawing for prizes. So that is what we have planned for the next few months. And I know everybody wants to know more, so this is how you can find out. You can come to the library, come visit us. We love seeing everybody. You can go to our website, you can go to our events calendar, or you can come find us at Outreach. We are out there in the community. Not all of us are on the bike yet, but some of us are. But we will be out there. And of course, none of this would be possible without the dedicated, tenacious staff at your local public library. So we will be celebrating National Library Workers' Day next Tuesday, April 21st, and we look forward to seeing everybody at the library.
Thank you, Susan. Item 9 is to receive a presentation from VDOT and consider adopting a resolution of support for amending the scope of the Broad Street Improvement Project, UPC 120461. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Our friends from VDOT will do a much better job of thoroughly explaining the question before the council this evening, but I will do my best to give it an introductory remarks and also welcome our guests to the podium. The original stated objective of the project was to improve the overall operational safety of the Broad Street corridor. And more specifically, it's a 1.3 mile section of the corridor which runs from the intersection of Broad Street, West Main, and Rosser to the intersection of Broad and East Main. This improvement was essentially accomplished by replacing the center two-way left turn lane with designated turn bays and raised medians. Doing so restricts the number of full access points onto Broad and would reduce accidents. Project also included or includes limited elements of pedestrian facility improvements and aesthetic improvements, but the primary objective again was to improve vehicular safety by reducing conflict points. That original design was subject to public review and comment in August of 2025. Based in part on public comment and subsequent VDOT staff review of the comments and initial design, VDOT has developed a revised scope which provides for the desired vehicular crash improvements and additional enhancements for bicycle and pedestrians. A key change in the design, or perhaps even the key change in design, reduces 2 travel lanes, both east and west directions, to a single lane in each direction. The change is sufficiently significant to warrant a new presentation to council. This evening, the council will receive that presentation by Brad Reed, a representative from VDOT, and Mr. Reed will do his best to explain the project scope and respond to questions from City Council. This evening, the council is asked to consider a resolution approving the revised scope, and if approved, the project would be subject to additional public comment. Manager's recommendation is to receive the presentation and consider the resolution, and the suggested motion would be to adopt the resolution approving the revised scope. So, in short, the staff would recommend approval of the revised scope, but I understand that aside from the technical and transportation considerations, there are broader considerations, and the fact that this project was previously presented and subject to comment makes our situation a little more nuanced. And so we respect that council will weigh the opportunity and ultimately make that decision. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Brad Reed from VDOT.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thanks so much for having me. Not as fun a topic as our public libraries, but at least, transportation is something cool we can all get behind. I do want to emphasize first that you all have a funded project today. There's nothing that's going to change that. But being planners, we peddle in ideas. And so we're coming forward with an alternate idea for you that you've had a preview of, to elaborate a little bit on it this evening, and to, as you're right, ask questions. Please interrupt if there's anything that isn't clear, and I'm happy to provide additional information. So just starting off, here is an illustrative example of what's out there today on the top. So you've got 2 drive lanes in each direction, with a narrow bike lane in each direction, and then a center turn lane. And then below that, it is an illustration of the current funded project and what it would provide. This is what you all put forward into our Smart Scale grant funding program. That would provide a center median rather than a center turn lane, as well as a sidewalk on the other side of the roadway. There's not sidewalk today, filling those critical gaps. So nonetheless, a very important, significant project you all have funded here today. Alternate proposal here today, we have, again, existing what's out there in the field today on top, and on the bottom is the new proposal. So what we're showing here is 1 drive lane in each direction, and instead of a median in the center, a center turn lane, and then 6 feet provided for each of those bike lanes, which now we're, unfortunately, with the previous proposal, as you can see, I did not show bikes in the current scope because we're actually substandard for a bicycle lane and would have to be removing the bicycle lanes with the current scope with the VDOT project. The new proposal will provide adequate width to meet bike lane width standards. I would also provide a buffered space between those drive lanes and the bike lanes. But ultimately, the main goal here is safety. The reason that we're putting this forward, not only does it tie in well with the funded roundabout, this to the at the intersection of Main and Rosser and Broad with a single lane approach. You'd be narrowed down to a single lane anyway at that intersection. But it also provides you many other advantages. So I'm just going to walk through those a little bit here. So taking a look at the 5-year crash history, there was 137 crashes over 5 years. Not insignificant for such a small section of roadway in the city. 67% of those crashes notably occurred at intersections. So intersections are locations where that median that runs between intersections isn't really doing a whole lot of good. It's going to help address crashes where you have commercial entrances and folks turning left in and out of those, where there are some conflicts between vehicles. And it would also help address the bicycle and pedestrian crashes to a degree by adding mid-block crossings. However, folks would be crossing 4 lanes of traffic with the current proposal versus 2 with the new proposal. So by our estimate, the current scope really only addresses about 16% of those crashes, and really getting at the intersection crashes as well as the side swipe and folks who are running off the road crashes are the ones that we are not addressing with that project. So there's a lot of potential here. The lane reconfiguration proposal that we're putting forward really addresses where our nodes are. Our nodes are the intersections. That's where we're seeing issues. Our nodes are also where we see capacity constraint. So we have fewer lanes to cross at intersections, but we're still maintaining those turning lanes and providing adequate capacity where those turning movements need to be made at those key intersections. These configurations with a single lane in each direction also help what we call harmonize speeds, help normalize speeds, so you get less disparity between people passing, speeding around each other, and still provides a turning lane for folks to get off to the side, whereas the median, you'd have to be pushed to certain locations to make your turning movements. With that, I mentioned shorter pedestrian crossings and also more space for cyclists. And we'd also be using still a targeted median application. So this would be 5 or 6 locations that would use a small section of median that we identified as high crash locations where the median treatment would really help with some of those commercial access points. We also would be providing more space for folks to avoid both sideswipe crashes and running off the road crashes. So trying to get at all those various things that are going on that we're seeing historically on this corridor. So the big question is, well, how can we reduce 4 lanes down to 2, right? Why are there 4 lanes today? Well, many of our roadways were built at a time when we had different traffic volumes, different traffic patterns, different expectations of where growth would go in the future. But that doesn't always carry through into reality. And what we're seeing in the reality here, I know there's a lot going on this slide, but I think the key points are underlined there in the middle. The actual volumes on Broad Street have decreased about 19% in the last 25 years. By contrast, with our evaluation of this proposal, which I'll share the details of here in a moment, we assumed a 25% increase in traffic. So, a pretty large dichotomy between what we've seen and what we're assuming. That assumption would take into account any kind of, expected circumstances like the addition of the Natural History Museum, for instance, as well as, revitalization of some of the shopping centers on the corridor. So we can see at the very top, the sort of what this means in terms of daily volumes of traffic. We're going from about 10 to 12,000 today to about 12.5 to 15,000 in the year 2048. Again, forecasting is not a science. It's an art. I'm not an artist, but we do our best. But we feel that this is a very conservative estimate of where we would be in 2048, meaning that we're probably overestimating where it would be then. So what does that mean for a roadway reconfiguration if we're going to reduce lanes? Well, typically, a roadway reconfiguration, this is from the VDOT roadway reconfiguration guidance. We have over 30 localities making these kinds of reconfigurations. Less than 16,000 daily traffic is a typical sort of benchmark for, it's probably a pretty reasonable approach there. Nonetheless, we still do an operations analysis that goes along with that. And so with our work that we've done leading up to your preview of this at your work session and today, we performed traffic modeling using those future 2048 forecast volumes and found that all of the intersections functioned acceptably during your morning and evening rush hours. We did see some backup at the intersection of Poplar Avenue and New Hope Road, but we identified solutions to resolve that and actually make them operate better than what they would have with the alternate, with the median solution. Poplar Avenue, we'd have in the westbound direction striping a right turn lane in to provide adequate capacity. That's a higher right turn volume. And New Hope Road, this is one that takes just a little bit of explaining. With the median concept, many folks are going to be coming up and making a U-turn at New Hope Road, particularly as they pass Walmart neighborhood center. So with the center turn lane concept, we would have more access available for folks to turn directly into the shopping center, where those folks would not have to then come up to New Hope Road and be making that U-turn or as many left turns. So take away some of that volume and relieve pressure on the New Hope Road intersection. So with that, of course, throwing in a little fun here with a conceptual rendering. This is by no means, exactly what it would look like. This is just illustrative to kind of show what this sort of roadway configuration would look like. But with this information, we are approaching you with a resolution that your staff has put together to move this new proposal forward in the VDOT project delivery process. We would then revise that design, showing you exactly what it would look like at each intersection, each segment of the corridor, and then host a new public hearing where we would share the results, show that design, share why the concept had changed, and then we would proceed on a similar schedule and budget. So we expect this to only have a modest impact on the schedule of the project. We're still here and committed to deliver a quality transportation project to you all. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you all would have.
I have a question. I know you have you would be converting the single center median to your left turn priority lane. Will there be step-off entrances into existing businesses? That way, if, for example, if you're traveling down and you're trying to pull into Willow Oak, coming from Charlotte, will there be a step over lane where you can get over, or will everybody pulling in be pulling in from the single lane?
Everyone would be pulling in from the single lane is the plan until you get to the public street intersections where we would bump out and provide separate turning lanes.
And it,
No problem. That's why I'm letting you
waiting-
breathe. I'm letting you
didn't
breathe.
wanna- yeah. So, you said it's a funded project, fully funded?
The current funded project is named as current scope here. That is what you all have funded and
But
being
if,
delivered.
if we were to project or to go ahead and move forward, would the following, or would the subsequent, be fully funded?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We expect it would be the same, if not a lower cost.
What brought about the idea of the change, and this change after we've already gone through the process of getting to where we're at?
Well, really, so initially you all had put forward the project from the comprehensive plan, right? So it's a concept that was put in the plan. We had not done a detailed planning study that went along with that. So you all put it forward. Medians, great idea. Generally, adding sidewalk, great idea. And then the project was funded. We went out to the public hearing and then heard from folks asking, well, what's going on? How are we addressing all of the crash history that's going on here? And staff and VDOT talked a little bit, and we thought, okay, well, if we'd like to answer that question, let's go answer that question. Let's do the analysis to look at it. And that's where this came about. That was sort of the genesis of, okay, well, how do we approach this if we were taking this from scratch as a planning study that was, with support from VDOT? And this is one of the tools, this roadway reconfiguration that we have in our toolbox. It's actually being executed by about 30 localities across the state because of its performance for safety reasons. So as I mentioned, there, of course, always a consideration for capacity of the roadway. How many, are we still carrying the same amount of cars? Are we providing less delay or more delay? And that's when we went and did the operational analysis to follow up with that that I described towards the end of the presentation.
I know it'd be hard to compare apples to apples, but we're at locally, do we have a stretch of roadway that handles the same amount of traffic with the same amount of commercial on either side? Where did their traffic accident rates compare to this? Is there something that's similar that we can?
Yes, yeah, actually, so VDOT, and I don't have this in my slide deck, so I don't want to get way into the weeds with you, but we have basically a hotspot identification tool where we would take a look at intersections as well as segments of roadway and say, are there more crashes than what we would expect to see on that segment based on its characteristics, its number of lanes, its speed, amount of traffic it carries. On this corridor, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hotspot intersections that rank up in the top 100 more crashes than expected intersections in our district. And much of the corridor, I'd say probably about a third, if not more, of the corridor is designated as a high crash segment as well. So from our, what we use typically for a screening tool to say where's a study needed, these hotspots would indicate we have a lot of crash issues on this corridor relative to a similar corridor with similar characteristics.
Does that include vehicle to bike crashes as well in your study?
Yes. So vehicle to bike crashes, we had 2 vehicle to pedestrian, 2 vehicle to bike crashes on the corridor in the 5-year period we looked at here.
That's under the current.
With the existing configuration.
So to Mr. Wood's question,
Mm-hmm.
a like corridor under the proposed, do you have information on bicycle crashes or vehicle bicycle crashes?
Not at the moment, but I'd be glad to follow up with that information. We do have a similar screening tool for bicycle and pedestrian safety. I'm not sure if this corridor is designated as such.
You said how many crashes were in there in that 5-year period?
137.
137.
And this is from this, so the analysis period we looked at, we work in 5-year blocks with, for our analysis for our projects through our grant programs. The This particular project was for the Smart Scale, looked at crashes between 2018 and 2023. And so that's what I'm reporting on at the moment.
So you're looking at about roughly 50 crashes a year, put in the math.
More like 20.
20 or
20, yeah.
Went backwards on it, 20.
No problem, no problem.
So my concern on it is the citizens of Waynesboro with, got 4 lanes of traffic going, the inconvenience of taking it down to 2, and inconvenience might not be the right word, but there's the change of taking it down to 2 lanes versus, and I don't mean to make any crash, seem insignificant, it's not by any means. But for 20 a year and as busy an area as that is, I would be wanting to see, really get more feedback from the community as what they thought of taking the lanes down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes versus how many crashes they are. Did I say that right? Yeah. I mean, I'm trying not to make those crashes sound insignificant because they're not. Every
Absolutely.
one of them count. But myself, before I did any resolution, I think I would like to get a little more information back from the community.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around, our growth, and based on the growth, I'm just finding it hard to understand that 2048 forecast that's going to, or the 19% decrease since 2001. So, I'm sure the data is accurate. I'm just trying to understand.
Accurate to this point in our history, but with all the developments going on in our area, that's going to increase.
Yeah.
Do we have any projected numbers of what
Yeah.
that will increase in the next few years with those developments?
So typically how we'd handle this, so this was not a formal planning study where we went through the typical process of gathering, okay, let's identify specific developments that are coming along. Let's look at, for instance, your regional model from the MPO as all the different forecasting tools might be available. Instead, we took and actually, I apologize. We did that back when the project was funded. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm coming to this project sort of after some of my other compatriots at the office. So we did actually look at the regional model, and we did look at what the historical changes have been. We initially looked at, okay, well, 0.5% would basically be warranted because that's our lowest amount of growth we would accept. We never propose decreases in volumes just to be, again, deconservative, consider what some growth might do to impact the operations of a corridor. We brought it up to 1%, as I recall, to try and take into account unknown factors. Again, Natural History Museum and the potential turnover of some of these shopping centers that would be easy to turn over. That's infill development, existing developments on the ground that could be brought back into operation. So that was the background behind why we'd assume 1%.
And I would like to add, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would like to add that I too support, safety, which is where this report seems to strongly be coming from. But for me, I think I need further proof that we're not necessarily creating congestion that we can't recover from. And so if we approve this new thing, and we have so many newcomers here, so aside from a potential museum, aside from a potential whatever growth that you were talking about, the shopping center there, I believe you mentioned, we're just having many more families come, increased population, that I don't think maybe you can anticipate from analyzing historical numbers, because I've been in the community for 30 some odd years, and this is the largest growth that I've seen in population seemingly. And so again, is there something to account for that, as far as what peak hours look like right now versus what it could look like if we considered this new design. And what is the tipping point basically for when this design no longer works? You know, what is it? And so those are some of the questions that I'm kind of managing in my head. And so as far as a resolution tonight, I don't think I have that, and I don't think I've gotten that from the presentation, although your presentation was informative. I don't think I've, resolved the questions in my mind, and so I'll stop there. Thank you.
I have to agree with the vice mayor. I think probably our best course of action would be to table this for the time being until we do get more information.
Okay, so is there a motion to table?
I had another question.
Okay,
Sure thing.
Would there be an adjustment to the speed limit on that section if we dropped it from the 4 lanes with the median to the 2 lanes with the turn lane? Would it maintain the 35?
We had assumed it would maintain 35, but I think a good next step would be for us to discuss with your staff what additional assumptions you'd like us to consider and build into our analysis. We are, of course, on a tight deadline. As you all can imagine, we're trying to deliver the project that's already funded. So we would want to keep this moving forward as efficiently as possible. So if there is additional analysis, that's something we can achieve. As far as holding additional public hearings before y'all have approved it, that would take a tremendous amount of work. So I do want to just put that out there that I think that's something we'll need to have a little bit more dialogue on.
All right, and then to the vice mayor's point, in your presentation, it's under 16,000 daily, highly recommended, kind of fits in this mold. What's the threshold if we were under that you would say this fits the mold for going to 4? Obviously, it wouldn't be 16. Is it 18 or is it 20?
Yeah.
At what is that threshold where you would say you really need to go? I know there's some intermingling. There's a buffer zone in those recommendations, but I think that would help clarify. And I don't want to outspeak or speak over my colleagues or speak for them, but I feel like together we can get our heads together and get the questions that we feel need to be answered. And then we can put feelers out, and anybody in the community that would like to reach out to us before the next meeting, I feel like we could do our due diligence and be ready to decide one way or the other whether we want to move forward with the new recommendation or go with the current design by next council meeting, barring some type of unforeseen issues.
Sure thing. Yeah, and to answer your
see the
question,
urgency.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I see the urgency in getting the funded project going, so.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll give you the sort of the least satisfying answer, which is it depends on with the traffic volumes. It depends on each corridor. It depends on how many intersections there are, how many traffic signals, how many turning movements are at each one of those intersections. So that's why the 16,000, that is sort of a guidance, I wouldn't even say it's a threshold. It's just sort of this is generally under that volume, they work well. If you're under 10,000, generally it's great, go for it. Between, there are communities who are doing these at 20,000 ADT, generally out west. But it all comes back down to that intersection level modeling analysis that's done for the specific conditions on this corridor. So that's what we can provide, and we can hash that out a little better. Different assumptions if you all would like those.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Questions? Vice Mayor, any questions?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
I'd like to put forth a motion that we table this until we get some more information.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. So there's a motion to table
Second.
until the April 27th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Comby. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to abstain as an employee of the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any discussion? So all in favor of tabling till the April 27th meeting, say aye.
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 Ayes have it, 4-0 with 1 abstention from Mr. Short.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
sir.
Look forward to speaking with your staff farther. Have a great night.
Item 10 is to receive an update on the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget and process for adoption. Mr. Hamp?
Yes, sir. Just a quick review. given that I was not present for the presentation of the recommended budget, I wanted to take a brief opportunity to hit some highlights and emphasize some key points, at least from the manager's perspective, to the council regarding the budget. First item is to just touch base on some key dates. We have a busy April and May in front of us. As we typically do in a budget process, we can modify the schedule according to the needs of the council. So as we work through, if we need, if the council sees benefit and requires each budget work session, we naturally will preserve those and have those meetings to continue our work. If we reach a point at some time in the future where council feels like it's consideration, evaluation, command of the information, or we're ready to make a decision, we're not obligated to have those. So there's some flexibility in what is a fairly full schedule over the next month and a half. On Monday, the 20th, we'll have a work session that will focus on CIP and refinement. We'll attempt this evening to identify gaps between what's been presented to council and what your expectations and preferences are. And refinement is simply the process of narrowing that gap, if one exists, and polishing and amending the budget or recommended budget to get it to the point where the council as a body is comfortable and confident adopting. On the 27th, we have a public hearing on both tax rates, utility rates, and the expenditure side of the budget. That's a pretty important evening, not just for the council, but for our community. And I would note that one of the goals for this evening is to assess alignment and confidence with the advertisement or a tax rate that the staff will use for the public advertisement for the hearing. So that's a pretty important decision that we need to accomplish this evening. And then once we get to that point, we're on a pretty typical introduce, refine, and adopt plan. So that's our schedule. The general fund overview, again, it's a $77 million budget, a $4.95 million increase year over year. That's nearly a 7% change. And a key point of consideration and feedback this evening is that the fact that the recommended budget is based on a real estate rate of 87 cents per 100, and our current rate is 82 cents. So we'll ask council at the conclusion of this agenda item to confirm to staff, if you're able, are you comfortable advertising at 87, knowing that you can work down if you're so inclined, but we can't work up. So if council has thoughts about a higher tax rate, we need to know about that tonight. But that's the process that we've used in the past. I want to spend a minute, though, on actually enterprise rates. Hold on 1 second, please. Concerning the general fund, a couple of thematic and technical notes from the manager. First, I would regard this as a level service budget, meaning with the exception of the communications manager or communications officer position, the funding preserves the current level of service. We're not introducing new programs. We don't have new departments. We're not elevating existing levels of service. Again, with the exception of the ability to communicate potentially and engage with the community in a different manner with that position. I would suppose that you could regard the investment in the high school as a level of service change, but it's a capital investment. And when we talk about level of service, we tend to refer to programs and services and the work that our departments do in service to the public. As Cameron presented previously, and I hope the council has had an opportunity to reflect on whether or not you believe this recommended budget meets your expectations or attends to the priorities that you've communicated to staff. both formally at our work session and informally as we've accomplished work through the year. Staff is attentive to, and we tend to listen to cues that we get from council about where you think our effort, our capacity, our strategy might need to improve. So the budget does, in that regard, I hope, speak to those priorities that the council has communicated, again, both formally and informally along the way. A few words about the 5-cent recommended increase in the real estate rate. Those 5 cents, I think it's important to identify for the community and our taxpayers why that recommendation and what that recommendation accomplishes. So 3 cents of those 5 are dedicated to anticipated debt service on the high school project. 1 cent is anticipated to fund the communication position and continue our work in the salary scale adjustment. And kind of we heard that as a council, that we felt better about work productivity, quality of work, speed of work, in public works as an example, now that we are achieving better retention rates, lowering vacancy rates, and similar comments that we've heard in public safety. The work that the police and fire departments do, we think, is being positively impacted by improvements to compensation and the ability to attract and retain well-qualified individuals. And then finally, 1 cent is dedicated to the Community Vitality Fund. During our work session, we talked about the council's desire to at least consider, if not fulfill, an idea that investment in the community would be an ongoing investment and included in the operating fund and funded by recurring revenue. So that's what underpins the 5-cent recommendation. And I think we have talked about in the past that it's important for the manager and for the council to communicate to the public what benefit do they receive, what change do they receive, what value do we realize when we recommend a revenue increase. And I think this year, that's what you get for that increase, that marginal increase. I would note, as a technical matter and a matter of interest, and Mr. Sloat referred to this earlier in the evening, the recommended appropriation to the Waynesboro Public School System is informed by the current funding formula, which has been in existence, dates back to inception. So there's no modification, no change, no alteration to that. That recommendation is born out of the system that we've been using heretofore for nearly 2 decades. And then secondly, referring back to the tax rate increase and the investment in the high school project, when that's approved and accomplished, that will likely be the largest capital investment on the part of the city in its history. And I think it's appropriate that it's the high school that's given the prominence of public education, the importance of public education, but that is and has been a budget driver over the last several years, and likely will be continue into next year to some extent. That's the general fund themes. In the enterprise funds, you see a 5% increase, or a proposed 5% increase in the water rates and a 5% increase in proposed sewer rates. Those are driven, depending on funds, by different factors. The capital investment and system infrastructure needed investment and infrastructure improvements are driving the rates in sewer and water. Capital and equipment purchases and rolling stock are driving the rates in the refuse division. All 3 funds are impacted by inflationary pressures to some extent, and all 3 funds carry some marginal increase in expense as we implement salary scale adjustments and continued compensation improvements in those enterprise funds. It may not need to be said, but sometimes I will sleep better tonight if I say this for the council and the listening public. Those enterprise funds, our utility funds, are funded exclusively by the revenues generated through those fees that users pay through consumption and flat fees. There is no subsidization of enterprise funds from the general fund. So the tax conversation and the general fund conversation are separate from rate increases and and expenditure plans in the 5 individual and distinct enterprise funds. I would like to note that probably in the next work session or the one subsequent, staff does need to talk to the council about recommendations to increase tipping fees at the landfill. I think we find ourselves doing some surveying in the market and needing to fund some additional capital investment there. And I would note, realizing that our public and consumers and customers are sensitive to increases in taxes, increases in enterprise funds, and potentially increases in tipping fees. Residents of Waynesboro can deliver refuse to the landfill in Augusta County at no cost. So when we talk about raising tipping fees, we're aimed almost exclusively at commercial haulers. So the individual homeowner consumer that loads up the truck or the trailer on Saturday afternoon to haul yard debris or household trash would not be impacted by those tipping fee increases. And now we come to the topic of alignment. If over the course of the last month or so, or excuse me, week or so, you've had opportunity to survey or review, inspect the recommended budget, and you can identify this evening where you have questions or concerns or where you think maybe the manager got something wrong, we can receive that feedback and start working on it. The key piece, again, of alignment that we need tonight, though, is the council's comfort advertising a tax rate at 87, and then also, I suppose, advertising those utility rate increases for the purpose of a public hearing, knowing that we could go down but not up. Cameron, do you have anything that you wanted to touch on, or?
Just the, on the one manager recommended change, as we step back after the sprint to the finish to try and wrap up the manager's recommended budget over the last week or so, we looked and we felt like the maintenance tech in the Parks and Recreation Department deserved more discussion, and that the communications position, we were probably not going to be at a spot on July 1 to hire that spot, either from how a staff is going to use it or how a council should expect to use it. And so we worked through that and realized that if you push the hiring of that maintenance tech back almost in coordination with the raise to like November 1st, we could fund both of those positions from November 1st on, and that would probably be a good use of the funds that you won't use for the first couple months of the communications position while we develop the job description, get working group development with directors to make sure we're using it in the best way, and then make sure that council and staff are on the same page on how that position should coordinate through the city manager's office. One point of clarification on the enterprise funds, on the stormwater, you may end up in the next couple of months, maybe with the budget piece, if we can get it ready in time. We need to spend some time aligning the late fees and penalties in the stormwater fund with how we do those in the water fund. And so we're working with council now. I think it might still be at staff level. I'm not sure if council has seen it yet. But we're working at staff level now to say, okay, how do we do late fees and how do we do collections in the storm or in the water fund? That works pretty well. You always have the trigger of cutting the water off that makes it work a whole lot better. But we don't have a good method spelled out for sending delinquent notices and things like that in the stormwater fund in terms of charging the $1.50 fee and things like that, and the rate of interest. And so we're going to spend some time clarifying that in code, and then in the general fund, the piece that Mr. Hamp was talking about with the communications officer and the raise, most of the raise was funded through organic growth. What we ended up doing was the communications position was about, I think, $130,000 to $140,000, round numbers, pennies about 300. So to pull that raise back would have probably been mid-year, January 1. To pull it back to November 1, we used the difference in that 1 penny. So that 1 penny doesn't, the half of that 1 penny doesn't cover the entire raise. It covers about $170,000 about $1 million towards it, and then about $1.5 million over the course of a full year the following year. Yes, sir.
You have high delinquency rates in stormwater?
We do.
Define high delinquency.
High is relative, that fund is relatively new in that it came to an inception in 2018. And so making sure that we're trying our best to pull those down and pull all legal levers that we can to collect those funds. I would hate to venture a guess, it's probably in the 90% range in terms of what we collect, which is not bad, but
We
it can be.
collect 90 or 90 is delinquent?
No, we collect 90.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we collect a good chunk of the funds. They're higher than they need to be because we're not pulling all the levers that we possibly can.
I think that's all that I have. If we could get some consensus about 87, that would conclude our work on the budget for this evening, unless you have questions or comments.
I'm good with 87 to advertise, continue the conversation.
87.
You looking at me for? If I go, I'm good. We're good.
All right, we'll advertise 87. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11 is to consider adopting a resolution of support for the 1030 Austin Court Affordable Housing Project. Mr. Ham.
Yes, sir. Due to recent funding reductions at the federal level, the 1030 Austin Court Affordable Housing Project, as a reminder, a $36 million project that will deliver 96 multifamily 1 and 3-bedroom units, finds itself with a budget shortfall of about $750,000. With the groundbreaking on schedule to begin later in this summer, the shortfall is likely, if not remedied, to postpone the project. The city understands that the Community Foundation has offered to cover $250,000 of the shortfall. And then once the staff learned of that, we had some collaborative conversations about sharing an effort to make up the shortfall. And currently, we're contemplated, or the council is asked to consider contributing the remaining $500,000 of shortfall. The mechanism for executing this support, if it's council's pleasure, would be a performance agreement through the Economic Development Authority. Enterprise, the developer, will receive payment on the following schedule: $200,000 in July of 2026, $200,000 in July of 2027, and then $100,000 in July of 2028. And the performance agreement will be written contingent on the Community Foundation's $250,000 contribution, and ensuring that Enterprise meets identifiable construction milestones. The staff contemplates using the Community Vitality Fund to fund at least this year's amount, and then that would leverage about $5,208 per unit. Based on the current timeline that the developer communicates, the project is scheduled for conversion completion with rentals in spring of 2028. Happy to answer any questions you have.
You said the total budget for that project's $36 million.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious how affordable $375,000 a unit is.
375.
37. I'm curious here.
I
Are
don't
we-
think, I don't
we're-
think we have a unit cost on that. I think what we are just looking at is the total project budget, and then the funding gap identified by the developer. And then I think the math on, I think what happens then is our contribution, or the city's contribution, essentially calculates to about a $5,000 contribution per unit. Is that right, Mr. Wood?
seemed like establishing the Community Vitality Fund, that kind of fits the definition of what it was for.
Crazy. Who could have ever imagined
Oh, stop.
an opportunity? No, I mean, no, I mean, seriously, I mean, you know, this stuff doesn't happen with one vote. I mean, so I'm super grateful but yeah, who could have imagined that we would have found ourselves in this spot a year ago?
What it was for.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And to reiterate what's in our written documents, I don't think it was said, or at least my ears did not hear, that this is 96 units, multifamily 1 to 3 bedroom units.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just putting it out there so people can hear in case they're not able to see what we're looking at, even though they can go to the site and download it. So thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Hamp? No? If no other questions, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
No second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Item 12.
Oh, this is great. 5-0. That's great. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely. Item 12 is to consider adopting a resolution approving the city's participation in the proposed combined settlement agreement resolving certain opioid-related claims. We'll call on our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. I have a little bit of laryngitis, so bear with me. This is similar to other opioid settlements that I've brought before you in the past. This one is a little bit different in the fact that the states are not participating in the settlement. So the calculation that the opioid settlement agreement, MOU, that the city entered into 3 or 4 years ago, the calculation denominator has been recalculated because more money will be coming directly to the localities participating in it. It is a regional, national settlement involving 6 distributors of opioid medications, and it's over $97.6 million. So it will be a considerable national settlement. So we just need the council to consider and adopt the resolution for the city to participate in this additional opioid settlement. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Any questions? Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Sloat. Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Ted.
Well, second.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Item 13 is to hold a public hearing to consider introducing an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving requested associated amendments or proffers for tax map numbers 31-1-18, 31-1-108B, and 32-2-1B, located at 0 Forest Drive and 0 Bookerdale Road, known as the Silver Creek subdivision. Applicant Wells Land Development, LLC. Ms. Tate.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is a zoning map amendment, but specifically a proffer amendment for the Silver Creek property. This is a map showing kind of the surrounding area and the property outlined there. You have the Creekwood Village subdivision adjacent, the Kira Heights subdivision, and then additional kind of older existing residential within the community. So the applicant has requested the removal of 5 proffers that were approved as part of the original rezoning application for the Silver Creek subdivision. And instead of those 5 proffers, has volunteered 3 proffers in their place. Currently, staff is reviewing a preliminary plat, which shows the construction of 100 single-family residential lots on that remaining undeveloped portion of what was the original Silver Creek subdivision. So a little bit of background on the subdivision. It was approved by council in January of 2006, and the property was rezoned from RA1, which is now our RS12 or large lot, single-family residential, to RA2, which is now RS7, still single-family detached residential, but smaller lot sizes than the RS12. At that time, a CUP was also rescinded related to a planned unit development, and then 5 proffers were submitted by the applicant based on the conditions in 2006. After that rezoning occurred in 2006, a preliminary plat was approved showing 133 lots. So 34 of those lots were final platted in 2007 and 2010, and then the applicant that has presented this proposal acquired the property in 2025. So from 2010 till 2025, there hasn't been any development within the community. So this is the original 2006 preliminary plat showing the 134 lots. So the area outlined in red is representative of the already developed portions, and then the remaining undeveloped area that connects out to Bookerdale Road. So this shows the zoning. You note here that it's RS7. There's RS7 within the vicinity. There's some RG5 adjacent, and also some RS12 developed through the cluster option, so also smaller lots with larger open spaces in the Kira Heights development. The 2008 future land use map designates the property for low-density residential with some adjacent mixed-use development. So I'm going to go through kind of the 5 original proffers and kind of a little bit of the analysis of, why they were proposed at the time and kind of staff's recommendations as they relate to the development now. So the former developer agreed to construct a road that would connect Hawk Street, which was a street named within the existing preliminary plat, down to Bookerdale Road prior to the final plat approval for any lot beyond 61. And I'll show you a map of that road connection in a moment. So at the time in 2006, some of staff concerns were that traffic within this development would be routed to Forest and Bellevue, with much of that traffic going to the Northgate and Rosser intersection, and there was no light at that intersection in 2005-06. So that is kind of why we feel that that proffer was voluntarily offered to mitigate staff concerns. So really the connection to Bookerdale was needed at that time to really help disperse the traffic. So this shows the area outlined in red was the portion that the developer at the time proposed to build prior to the 61st lot being final platted. So of the 130 some lots, they would get 61 before they would need to make this connection. So staff today feels like the requirement to connect to Bookerdale Road should definitely remain. A full public access to that roadway should remain, because emergency response times would increase if, with our new fire station, if you were to have no connection at Bookerdale Road. And it makes up a portion of the planned Ludewitt Boulevard Rosser Avenue connector road that is shown on our comprehensive plan and has kind of slowly been either platted or right-of-way dedicated or being built with various subdivisions. And I'll show that just conceptual alignment for you. So this portion is being built by the townhouse development here. This portion is also being built. This area is, I think the next map, or this kind of helps clip through that. So this portion, Creekwood Village would be building this portion. This section is dedicated right-of-way that happened with the rezoning of Creekwood Village. And then I'll show kind of the rest of how Silver Creek's development would play into this connection. So the applicant has voluntarily proffered, one of their 3 proffers would be to build the connection to Bookerdale Road. They would dedicate the right-of-way for the unbuilt portion of the Ludewitt Rosser connector, and the bridge that would be required over Pratt's Run certainly represents a very high cost for the developer. So rather than building that portion, they're proposing to dedicate the right-of-way. And so I'll show that to you here. So they would be building this portion here in yellow that would connect out to Bookerdale Road, and then dedicating this gap right here. And then at that point, you can see kind of a majority of that road connection would be in place. There still would be some remaining areas here around the church and down to Lou DeWitt. But a significant portion would be either dedicated or built through various developments. This is just kind of a plat showing that would be the area to be dedicated and the portion to be built by this developer. So the next proffer that existed in 2006 was that the former developer agreed to contribute 26.5% to the total cost to construct a new 24-foot wide bridge over Pratt's Run on Bookerdale Road. So kind of the analysis and what was going on at the time. As you all are aware, the bridge is a single-lane bridge crossing Pratt's Run. Replacement has not been included in the city's capital improvement plan from 2006 until now. As far as I'm aware, no cost estimates for design or construction were ever completed. In 2009 and 2021, the city did complete some improvements to the bridge, not a widening, but some improvements. And then the last inspection classified the bridge as being in good condition, although, not wide enough. It is a single lane bridge. So staff's analysis today is that, with this Rosser-Lou DeWitt connector road, the plan would be to cul-de-sac Bookerdale Road, so kind of eventually making that bridge not needed for vehicular traffic. And so by the applicant removing their proffer to say they would contribute 26.5%, but they are contributing, building a portion of the connector road and contributing right-of-way for that connector road, kind of helps the eventual plan of that connector road and the idea that it would eventually be cul-de-sac to avoid vehicular traffic on that bridge. So the timeline, the city does not intend to replace the bridge if the Lou DeWitt Rosser connector road is completed as is envisioned. So for that reason, staff supports the removal of this proffer as we're working towards that eventual connection. Proffer number 3 that existed at the time of the original rezoning was that they agreed to contribute a 0.125 acre of land to the city to be used for a new pump station. And the reason for that was there were concerns at the time about sewer capacity and how that would be served because the pump station was over capacity at that time. So this proffer is really obsolete. The new pump station was built on a parcel within the Silver Creek development, so it makes sense, obviously, to remove this proffer. Proffer number 4, the former developer agreed that they would minimize traffic through Forest Drive and Bellevue Road entrances where possible. The existing developer has said they plan to do the same thing, without having it as a proffer. It is something that staff works with the developers on as we identify the public improvement plans and where signage may be placed for that. So the removal of it as a proffer, I would say, is not the direct desire of the developer to use it for construction traffic. Forest and Bellevue, he's actually said the opposite, that he would be using kind of the already existing access road off of Bookerdale for the majority of large construction traffic. The other part of proffer 4 was that the original developer said they would construct stormwater management facilities so that post-development runoff from a 25-year storm event would be reduced to the pre-development runoff from a 10-year event. That was the developer at the time in 2006 going above and beyond. The state has kind of taken care of that for us now. So this is obsolete, and we require more stringent stormwater regulations now that the developer would need to abide by. This just kind of details that. And then the final last proffer that the former developer volunteered that this developer is requesting to remove would be that the development would be constructed and maintained in accordance with a submitted master plan and under the design and landscaping guidelines that were outlined in that program document from 2006. So the program document at that time outlined the subdivision's objectives. It went into target markets, architectural and landscaping guidelines that were going to be enforced by an architectural review board within the community. And staff does note that It's unclear if the developed portion of the neighborhood really strictly adhered to that program document. There has certainly been, I believe, some HOA and ARB review within the community, but I'm not sure that it was strictly adhered to that document. So in place kind of that proffer, the applicant has voluntarily proffered that the phase 2 of the subdivision will be based on and look like the preliminary plat that they have proposed. So this really provides certainty about what the undeveloped portion would look like in terms of lot sizes and number of lots. And the layout is very similar to that of the original Silver Creek preliminary plat. So this is the one that is under review. It shows 100 additional lots in the phase, or the undeveloped portion of Silver Creek. You can see there are connections to Forest Drive, Bellevue Road, and Bookerdale Road for those units. And this just shows kind of a little bit of the difference. Same connections that existed for the original 2006 preliminary plat, and roughly the exact same, give or take a couple number of lots. So staff did note in our staff report that residents of the original Silver Creek may have bought into the neighborhood with an understanding of the types and styles of homes that would be built and kind of what the neighborhood would look like per that program document, although it may not have been strictly adhered to. So staff did have just note some general concern about kind of removing all of those does take away any ability for the city to really review or require any type of architectural styles. So the proffers that were approved in 2006 really did address concerns, at that time, 20 years ago. So in the 20 years since, things have certainly changed. The replacement of the pump station, newer, more restrictive stormwater management requirements, significant progress has been made on the planned Ludewitt-Rosser Road connector, although it is unfunded to completely make the full connection at this time. The city has made some repairs to the Bookerdale Road Bridge, and then staff does note some general concerns overall about how the new and old parts of the subdivision will blend together. So there have been some revisions in the submitted proffer letter. The applicant did submit a revised letter after the original Planning Commission meeting. But in the end, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the request with the amended proffers. But then since the Planning Commission meeting, even proffer number 2 was further amended. So the first proffer for this specific request this evening is that the development of the property will be in general conformance with the preliminary plat that they've submitted. The second proffer says that the Everett Street Road connection to Bookerdale Road shall be phased during the build-out of the subdivision. At the Planning Commission, it said prior to the final platting of Lot 119. That has since been amended to prior to the final platting of the 31st lot. A fire apparatus rated all-weather gravel road will be created to coincide with the final locations of Everett Street and Hawk Street. This road will be used solely for construction and emergency services traffic and would not be open to the public until construction of Section 4 occurs. Everett Street, with its connector to Bookerdale Road, would be constructed to city street standards and made available to the general public. And then proffer 3 is the proffer that shows the dedication of right-of-way for the future connector road. So this is the last slide that I have that just kind of shows you that phasing. So Section 1 has 25 lots. Section 2 is proposed to have 24 lots. Section 3, 31 lots. And Section 4, 20 lots. So the portion of Silver Creek Drive that would be built with Section 1, you can see there in yellow. They could have, phase 1 or Section 1 done and 5 lots within Section 2 before they would need to have an emergency access constructed and then the full access for public use would be at the completion of Section 4. So that's all I have prior to the public hearing, unless you all have any questions.
So now they moved that emergency road till after they finish Section 2?
No, it would be at the 30th lot. So they could do all of Section 1 and they could do 5 lots in Section 2 to get them to 30 before they'd have to have it in.
We're doing it earlier.
Yes, it was at the Planning Commission, they were talking about at Lot 119, which would have given them half approximately of Section 2. So this is pushing it even earlier. And the reason 30 is the number is because that is in fire code, that after 30 lots, you would have a secondary access. So that is where that comes from.
So, Leslie, but you can still build 1, 2, and 3, and never build 4, and never have a public access.
If they stopped, that is possible, yes.
So the emergency access would still be there.
Yeah, but then you have all of those homes in 1, 2, and 3 being pushed through forest.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
For traffic, yes.
Right.
Am I hearing that right? They could stop at 3 lots and not add the emergency road?
No, they have the emergency road, but.
I think he's
But
saying.
all the public access, 1, 2, and 3, all of those homes, 75 homes, would have to go
Yeah,
through a neighborhood,
yeah.
all the way around to go shopping or anything else.
Any other questions?
Questions? Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
I hereby open the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, no one has signed up to speak.
I hereby close the public hearing. Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to table consideration for the following reasons. I feel like staff has reached out to the applicant and had conversations, or attempted to have conversations relative to Proffer 5 as it relates to the architectural design criteria established. And so, given that the size of the development and that there is an existing proffer associated with the land, that there should be an additional attempt, at least an acknowledgement of if there's, because as I read the staff report, there had been attempts to ascertain whether or not the applicant would be willing or unwilling to consider or provide design standards for the homes, and that has been met with no response. And so I'd like to afford the applicant an additional opportunity to respond in the affirmative or in the negative as to whether or not there was an interest in doing that, given that, again, I believe that the first phase did purchase their homes with anticipation that it would meet some scale of design criteria. And to this point, as mentioned, that has not been provided either in the affirmative or in the negative by the applicant. So I'd like to afford some additional time for staff to coordinate.
Thank you, Mr. Short.
And then my second reason is I'm concerned about the phasing of, particularly since we had a development that was active and stalled with a sizable number of balance of proffers associated with it. That connection to Lou DeWitt is crucial. And to have 75% of the development built and with no assurance that public access would be made to Lou DeWitt is concerning. So I'd like to have the applicant work with staff to, again, have some conversations, either in the affirmative or in the negative, of their willingness or unwillingness to participate. That I think to the city's position, there are existing proffers that are in place. The property could be developed in conformance with the proffers as they exist today. So we'd just like to see if I'd like to afford additional time for the applicant to work with staff.
Any other comments?
I think that's a fair request.
Okay, Mr. Short has made a motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sloat.
Can I ask a question before we, so if those are the concerns, and maybe again, I need a greater understanding, then how come it's sitting in front of us? How come the planning commission didn't handle these perceived concerns? I mean, isn't that their role to handle all the concerns
It is.
before they get to us? And so they approved it and they pushed it here, and now we got some concerns. And so my question is, how come, I mean, what's the role of the planning commission if this thing ain't settled by the time it comes in front of us? That seems
Well, the planning commission,
like an obvious question. I'm sorry.
well, yeah.
I-
So the planning commission, heard from the applicant. They asked a lot of questions. It was a
4-3 vote.
4-3 vote, to move that forward to council. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And so there were concerns at the planning commission as well.
And I would just
As
say,
indicated by the
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Vice Mayor, I might also just offer, you know, in my time on the Planning Commission for 8 years, we had oftentimes, we'd bring something, you know, we would provide something to council that council went a different way. Or they had other questions. I mean, that's the beauty of this public process, is that lots of folks can bring different perspectives, so.
So we have a motion that was duly seconded.
Point of order, Mayor Lee.
Yes, ma'am.
In your motion, Counselor Short, you table it to a certain date or just continue it in general?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly willing to bring it up to the next meeting, but I think should the applicant decide to consider alternatives in the affirmative to both of those concerns, then I imagine you're probably gonna need more than 2 weeks. So, to bring some, so I'd table it generally, yes, thank you.
So we're gonna table with not a date in mind. Okay. All in favor of tabling?
I'm not in favor of tabling it not with a date in mind, because then what does that mean? I mean, there needs to be some, I mean, you either, or get off the pot. So it's like, what date do we want? I think there needs to be a date to add pressure for us as well as, you know, the applicant, so we can get this thing resolved.
Yeah, I think that.
Because I gotta imagine that for the applicant, it's costing money. So some pie in the sky, unknown date, that doesn't fly right with me.
Vice Mayor, it's common practice to table something generally, then Ms. Tate in the Community Development Department can bring it back before council once either the developer and staff has had an opportunity to have conversations, and if they've reached an endpoint to those conversations where it's either gonna be affirmative or negative to Mr. Short's concerns, then she will know at that time to bring it forward. That's why staff will be able to direct, you know, whether it's 2 weeks, next month, or June, you know, we will be tracking it to ensure that it comes back to city council at an appropriate time.
Who was speaking?
That's the city attorney, Ms. Mickelson.
Okay, I couldn't tell. I'm sorry. Thank you.
She has laryngitis. Any other
Oh,
questions?
laryngitis. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, Vice Mayor, for the city attorney or the group?
No. And so basically, I guess what she said to summarize is that we're going to go with a pie in the sky date. And those are my words.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Ms. Tate is gonna speak.
So, Ms. Akonbi, we have been working very in touch with the applicant, and so we will certainly, you know, reach right out to them, and this week, if they're available, have a meeting to kind of discuss and finalize things. I think the main concern about tabling it just to 2 weeks from now is if the developer was to propose some additional proffers to address some of the concerns raised, it might take him and staff a little bit more time to work through those. And so then we would,
Yes.
we would kind of miss that opportunity. But you have, my commitment that as soon as, the applicant would like to meet with us and work through those, me and my staff are available.
Okay.
And would
So
bring it back
it's an
as soon as
active
possible.
Collaboration between the two parties.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would just say, Mr. Wells has done a lot of developments in the city, and so, I think in the spirit of cooperation, I know staff will do a great job of coordinating with them.
Okay, so the motion is to table for a date that will be established between community development and the applicant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Item 14, communication correspondence and calendar. Mr. Hamp.
I don't have anything this evening, sir.
Item 15, citizen comment period.
Yes, sir. Mary McDermott?
So as Ms. McDermott comes to the podium, I would remind all, we've had a very busy agenda tonight, and I would ask all to observe and adhere to the lights so that I do not have to cut you off.
All right. I am a senior citizen living here in Waynesboro. My 2 children are grown and they're long gone from Waynesboro. Why should my tax dollars go to support the Waynesboro schools? I'll tell you why. Because a quality school system is vital to the economic health of the city. Good schools are key to attracting new businesses to our city, particularly businesses that offer high-paying jobs. Businesses want to know that their employees will be able to send their kids to good schools. But our schools get low ranking from the sources people use when they consider buying or renting a home. And for businesses located here in Waynesboro, our schools must produce a workforce with the skills that businesses need, or they'll expand elsewhere. And I know that from experience. Loomis and Intellos expanded into North Carolina because Waynesboro did not have the workforce skills needed to fill our jobs. I'm a member of the Go Virginia Region 8 Board, and I can assure you that counties and cities throughout Virginia are fiercely competing to get businesses to locate in their area. The quality of the school system is a major factor in those decisions. Waynesboro falls short. I'm also a member of the Shenandoah Valley Angel Investors. We invest in startups, trying to encourage entrepreneurs coming out of JMU and UVA to remain here in the Valley. Having an educated workforce is key to their business plans, and Waynesboro falls short. I didn't vote for you to mindlessly follow a formula to fund our schools. I pray that you think about what you're doing. Please make a decision for the long-term good of the city of Waynesboro. If we can build a robust business community with high-quality jobs, those businesses will relieve the tax burden on all of us. And I just want to end, I know it's late, with a quick personal story. Our younger daughter, Elizabeth, joined our family through adoption. And people in our family said, what a shame. 2 Harvard Law School graduates have to settle for a little Mexican baby. Lizzie graduated with honors from UVA and with honors from Stanford Law School. Her starting salary at a national law firm was $250,000, which is obscene, but that's another issue. I know we have children in Waynesboro with that same potential, and we have a moral duty to them to realize that potential, and it would also make sense for our economy. you must work with our school board to ensure our schools have the funding they need. And I will also just say, I am totally shocked that we are making a $500,000 donation to a private housing developer. I just can't imagine what's in your head doing that. But our schools need improvement. They need funding. You need to invest more in them, not less, or we are going to fall behind other localities in economic development because we don't have the people they need to fill their jobs, and our schools are not good enough for them to feel comfortable sending their children there. Thank you.
Ashley Short.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Short, and I live at 1001 Fairway Drive. I'm a former Waynesboro teacher and a parent of 3 kids in the school system. Hear about the school budget. I was glad to hear the acknowledgement that the council doesn't intend to harm schools and sees value in public schools. But I want to be clear that changing the formula to a cap is still something I want to discourage. And I'm here tonight because a cap is a cut. And the people who feel it aren't abstractions on a spreadsheet. They're my kids, they're your neighbor's kids. One of my children receives special education services. I have watched my child struggle. I have also watched their growth because they have access to qualified, trained teachers using the specialized reading program that my child needs. That progress isn't luck. It's the result of the right staff with the right credentials in a system that can afford to keep them. A 3% cap in a year where costs rise faster than that doesn't hold the line. It cuts positions. And the positions that go first are exactly the ones that my child depends on. Another of my children is in theater at the middle school, and I've been able to supplement their experience with private lessons, community theater, things that cost money. Not every family in this city can do that. For a lot of kids, WPS theater isn't enrichment on top of something else. It's the only door. It's where kids who have something in them find out what that is. You cut the arts budget and you don't hurt every family equally, you hurt the ones who have no other option. And all 3 of my kids are in sports. I know what it looks like when athletic programs are well-resourced and when they aren't. In equipment and staffing, and whether a coach has what they need to actually develop a kid, not just field a team. I'm not here just for my children. I'm here for every student in special education programs whose IEP depends on a position they didn't get cut. For every kid who finds themselves on a stage or a field and discovers they're capable of something they didn't know. For every teacher still in this system who chose to stay even when they could have left for higher pay somewhere else. I was one of those teachers. I left. Waynesboro lost me, and it didn't have to. The 42.5% formula has worked. It's not even generous, but it's functional, and it's a promise the city made. A cap is a cut, and the kids who can least afford it will pay the price. Thank you.
Mayella Hilker.
Hi, I am Mayela Hilker. I live at 766 Pine Ave. I'm in 6th grade at Kate Collins Middle School. I'm concerned about school funding. One of the reasons being I want extracurricular activities to stay because they have been a big part of the reason why I enjoy school so much. There are a lot of really neat ones that I want to be continued, including the school musical, garden club, art club, and book club. Each one presents different and cool activities to do and opportunities to connect. I think that is important for learning and creativity. I'm concerned that with a cut in school funding, these may be discontinued. I am also concerned about my teachers having to buy many classroom supplies out of their own money that they work hard to earn. Capping the school's budget will only make it harder for teachers to want to stay in Waynesboro. And with less teachers, there will be a lower quality in education.
Eric Hilker.
Thank you. My name is Eric Hilker. I live at 766 Pine Ave. Mayor Lee and members of council. I understand your struggle with the 42.5% funding model, as you reference, is that each time you want to fund something in our city with an additional tax revenue, for example, more personnel for police force or emergency services, you need about, and this is my own calculation, $174 in new revenue for every $100 you want to spend on something other than schools. And I can see how that would present barriers to funding other priorities. And those are important things that Waynesboro needs. Teachers are not the only Waynesboro employees that are underpaid, and schools are not our only institutions that could use more funding rather than less. I appreciate the work that you all do for our city. I know that you're working for the best for our city, and that the work you put in is significant, especially on long nights like tonight, and I really do appreciate that. The citizens that are assembled here want what is best for Waynesboro as well. And we don't think that a 3% cap would support that. And I appreciate you all making some comment this evening and saying that you're open to thinking about other funding models and maybe even resisting the idea of a cap, and I would really appreciate. I think there is some anxiety because the idea of a cap seems to really limit schools in terms of how their funding could grow along with Waynesboro. So the more you're able to kind of tell us about that, I think that'll be really helpful for us. I'll say that removing the 42.5% funding model appears short-sighted to me because cutting school funding is expensive in the long run. A weaker school system leads to higher crime in our community and persistent inequality as wealthier families send their kids to private schools and poorer families get inferior education. A weaker school system fails to support a skilled workforce, to supply local businesses and attract new companies. We've heard others say this. And a weaker school system cannot build a strong community of invested citizens, the sort of people who have turned out here tonight. A weak school system cannot support the long-term flourishing of the city. When, according to the Virginia Department of Education school quality profiles, our English writing performance lags behind the state average by 21 points, our reading performance lags behind by 13 points, and our math performance lags behind by 13 points. Our science performance lags behind the state average by 18 points. This is not the time to reduce the resources of our schools. This is the time to invest in the sustainable long-term growth of our city by investing in the future of our kids. In a city like ours, in every city really, there are never enough public funds to go around, never enough to fund everything at the levels we would like. There are always difficult decisions to be made. I appreciate you all taking on the responsibility of doing that for us as citizens. The wisdom of the 42.5% model is that it ensures our schools do not get left behind or put on the back burner. It's a form of chaining ourselves to the mast. It forces us to keep our priorities in order, to continue to invest in the future of our city despite whatever else might feel pressing in any given fiscal year. Decoupling the growth of the school budget from the growth of Waynesboro misplaces the priorities of our community. There is little that would be as damaging to the long-term success of our community as underfunding the schools. And I would hate to look back 20 years from now and see the long-term effects of an ailing and underfunded school system in our city. Our ask is that you protect the future of the city and of our kids by keeping that 42.5% funding model in place. Thank you.
Adam Seipel.
Hello, I'm Adam Seipel. I live in Ward D, and I'm a lifelong learner. Earlier this evening, I heard members of the council assure me that they fully support our schools and that there has been a misinformation running rampant in our community recently. as that lifelong learner, the product of a family of nearly 20 educators, like my music teacher Grammy, aunts, uncles, siblings, cousins, and my wife, a former Waynesboro educator. I'm committed to learning and admitting when I'm wrong about something and when I need to learn because I have new information. I eagerly await learning what the truth of your proposal is and the extent of your stated commitment to our schools, what those are as well. 6 years ago here, a community member stood at this podium and spoke about what it means to be a citizen of Waynesboro. He spoke about the difference between a loyalist and a patriot. He said that the loyalists simply follow the status quo, but patriots have a vision to create a better nation. He told us then, get off your butts and do something, be a voice in your community, stand up where you live. I'm here tonight because I took that advice to heart. But I'm not here to talk about the issues of 2020. I'm here to talk about our city thriving in 2026 and beyond. I admit that I frequently take my children to Waynesboro football games where we hear the voice of the little giants at the stadium. We hear you celebrating third down tackles and game-winning touchdowns under the lights. I even remember the excitement of the best football game I have ever seen in my life when we recovered 3 consecutive onside kicks, converting touchdowns on all 3. Your voice excited the crowd that night. And I remember Saturday morning going to my backyard neighbor's house. He happened to be the coach at the time, and just going on and on about what an amazing community and what an amazing evening I'd had at the football field the night before. Tonight, I remind you all, the little giants need your voice here in these chambers on Monday evenings, just as we do on Friday evenings. I'm inviting you tonight, you all, to be the voice of those little giants here too. I even brought shirts like my own for each of you, if you would like one, that says, we're the voice of the little giants, and then lists all the other schools you are also the voice of by supporting them, as you claimed earlier tonight. So if any of you would like these shirts, I will be happy to give you one, either now or after we adjourn in a few moments. In this town, we proudly call our students little giants, but a giant can only stand tall if we provide a solid foundation. We are the voice for all 3,100 little giants. I'm asking you to join us. And as you said earlier tonight, you're already standing there. I'm asking you to have a firm foundation and a resolute voice as you stand firm for our little giants through school funding. I challenge you to stand up for our schools, to stand up for our students, to stand up for Waynesboro, and to properly fund our school's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Item 16, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Slow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're adjourned.